Good morning, Red Wings fans and Hockey Nation fans. I apologize. I missed you guys on Friday. I was off, probably on an airplane, if I recall. But what an interesting weekend. The Detroit Red Wings faced the Boston Bruins in back-to-back games. As we know, the Boston Bruins are the big bad Bruins once again. And entering this, the odds didn't look too great, but they actually threw a pretty good game at the Bruins on their first matchup and then managed to pull off a miracle on their second. So what do you think about this? Hopefully you were excited after watching on the weekend. This was the reunion, or I guess the first time that the Red Wings would face longtime Red Wing Tyler Bertuzzi. And as you can see, that just looks wrong. So game one in this back-to-back matchup goes the Red Wings facing the big bad Bruins, who were 59-5 at the end of this. And the Red Wings started off really well in this first game, which was great news for the Red Wings. It was kind of shocking because going into almost the middle of the second period, it was 2-0. But you just knew the Bruins were just too good and too resilient to let that sit. And they managed to claw their way back, scoring 2 goals in the second to tie it up at 2-2. And it wouldn't be until the third period that Garnet Hathaway finished it off and pulled ahead with a regulation win and no points for the effort for the Red Wings in this first game. Interesting note. So, Andrew Kopp scores his 7th of the year unassisted. Alex Chason, who's been toiling with Grand Rapids in the AHL, this is a long-time NHL veteran. He's 6'4", 6'5", kind of third-line player. We know he's played in Edmonton. I think he scored 12 or 13 goals last year in the NHL for Vancouver. This guy's a very capable third-line player. He's not a second or a first-line player, and that's always been kind of the issue when people try to slot him up on that. He kind of struggles a little bit. But this is like, when I saw this signing earlier, I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. When are they going to call him up? And they didn't. He was having really good success in the AHL. So with all the deadline moves, I guess they finally decided to call Alex up, and he rewards them with his first goal of the season. He's an effective power play guy in front of the net. He's a big man. He's got good hands for a big man. So they, on that power play goal there with Perron and Larkin, Chason gets his first of the season. So this was good news. In the second period, finally at 12:43, Hampus Lindholm made it 2-1. And then on a power play, Patrice Bergeron, Mr. All Everything for Boston, gets his 24th of the year. And then you were like, oh, the tension set in. By the way, in this game, Magnus Hellberg, the goalie, played very well again. So this guy's really getting his groove in the NHL. It's kind of crazy that he's 31 and he's just, cutting his teeth in the NHL. This guy was the top draft pick or top drafted goalie in his draft year. He's much bigger than I realized. Like, I think he's like 6'6" or something, apparently they're saying. So that, he might turn out as the other goalie here. He's getting his feet wet. He's had a good KHL career. He's drafted originally by Nashville and then moved around a little bit. Played New York Rangers, I believe. He's turning out okay here. But then in the third, after the tables really turned. In the first part, it was all Red Wings, but then it wasn't. It suddenly went from like 16-8 in shots to like 27-16. Boston was not messing around here, and it resulted in this 3-2 win. But in the end, like the first period, I think if I looked at the shots, it was something like the Bruins had 6 or 8 shots in the first, and the Red Wings had like 12 or 14. And then at the end, it was nowhere close. Boston just lapped them. So you can see 38-31. The second half of the game was all Bruins. Good morning, Melissa. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. 60-40 on faceoffs for Boston. They really dominated the second half of this game. Big hits on both sides, 31-27. 58 hits in a game is a lot. 24 block shots for the Red Wings. That means 62 shot attempts. It only resulting in a 3-2 win. This is a credit to the, Magnus Hellberg played a real good game in his first one, but no dice, no points for the Red Wings in that first game. Then we got to go back and do it again. So at this point, at the end of this, What a shocking result. So after throwing a really good game, you thought, they can't do it a second time. Not only did they do it a second time, they finished the deal this time after starting out so well. 30, 27, and 9. The Red Wings get their 30th win of the year. The Bruins, that hands them their 10th loss of this. It was once again 1-0 after the first on Alex Chiasson. Scores again on the power play, this time from Larkin and Raymond. So you're seeing this is a big body in front of the net that a lot of teams don't have. And he's an NHL veteran. He's got good hands. So that worked out okay. And then it was 2-0 with Moritz Seider, and then 3-0 with Dylan Larkin, and 4-0 with Adam Ernie. It was once again at the beginning of the game, all Red Wings. But then panic starts setting in. Matt Grelchik made it 4-1, which you weren't too worried about. But then the third, once again, the Bruins turn on the tap. Oh, great. That is amazing to know. Well, I appreciate you joining. And we appreciate Red Wings fans, obviously all hockey fans, but it's nice when you have a Red Wings podcast / YouTube and you have Red Wings fans on it. What did you think of the game, Melissa? It was pretty interesting. I thought they played pretty well in the beginning of the first game, but then just got overwhelmed by the end of it by Boston, who were very determined not to lose. It looked like that was going to happen again because suddenly it was 4-3, and you're like, oh my God, here we go again. Are they going to turn the tables here? A little bit later in the game this time, a lot of goals for the Red Wings lately who have really struggled to score. But then Andrew Copp makes it 5-3 with 19:36 left with, I believe this was an empty net goal, his 8th of the year. So he scored goals in back-to-back games. Alex Chiasson scores in back-to-back games. 3 points in this game for Dylan Larkin, who seems to have woken up a little bit here. No points in any of this, if I'm not mistaken, for Tyler Bertuzzi, the former Red Wing. And what did you think of seeing Bertuzzi in a Boston uniform? It's just wrong to me. I don't get it. What's going on? Yeah, no points for Bertuzzi in those games, but pretty good split here. A real tough game, the first one that they got kind of schooled on, but in the end of it, but 62 shot attempts by Boston. That showed how in that first game, how overwhelming it was. Credit to Magnus Hellberg and then Ville Husso for the win here. It almost got out of hand, but they managed to close the deal. That's a huge win over probably the top team. I think they're first in the NHL. That's only their 10th loss. 50-10. That is an ungodly number. That is crazy. We're seeing some, I think the Chiasson thing's good news for them a little bit. Like, listen, this is just the way it's going to end, though. First of all, Jake Wallman, if you watch this guy, he is so good offensively. He's very smart. 21 minutes of ice time. You totally see why he's in there. Like, to move on from Philip Roenick, who I don't know, we have to check and see, is he having an impact in Vancouver or not? I thought he played real well in Detroit, but you can't question Stevie Yzerman. He has his finger on the pulse more than anybody, and the salary implications for the future were there. Ben Sherrod is just, he's okay. It's not what you would wanted. Not for the amount of money and the no movement clause. I think that really cost us Roenick. But Wallman is excellent. This is a great pickup from that St. Louis trade for Nick Leddy. They lost Sundqvist, which, seems to be easily replaced at this point by Alex Chiasson. So this is a guy I didn't even think about in the AHL that's come up, and I wasn't sure they were going to call him up, but obviously this is a 1-for-1. You move out Sundqvist, you get an asset, you plug in Alex Chiasson. That's worked out pretty well. That's kind of the same role and maybe better at this point. So we see in the standings 2 losses for Carolina, including, did they get shut out by Jonathan Quick 4-0? Jonathan Quick is 3-0. 3-0 going to Vegas. I'm telling you, he is angry and he wants to win the Stanley Cup. This, to me, bumps the odds up in Vegas. It sounds weird and not like just the odds that the Golden Knights win. So 2 losses for Carolina, one of them at the hands of Vegas. That's kind of crazy. Patrick Kane, we know, has started to pick it up a little bit for the Rangers. New Jersey just keeps on chugging on. 3 wins in a row, 7-2-1. Wow, and you see this 1 L, but they're still 8-2-0 in their last 10, which is ridiculous. It's only their 10th loss of the year for Boston, which is also ridiculous. But to score 5 goals against that Boston team is pretty impressive. So good for Detroit. They're going nowhere fast. They remain in 7th in the wild card, and this is not going to change. Man, Buffalo's fallen off. 2 losses in a row suddenly for Ottawa, who are really, really hot. Does Washington climb back into this? It seems like it's possible. And, Florida is suddenly in the mix a little bit. 6-3-0 in their last 10. The Islanders dropped a little bit with a loss, but they're still 6-3-1 in their last 10. And then 7-2-1. The Penguins getting back in the groove with Tristan Jarry back in the lineup. That is we were just saying, originally I was saying if Jarry can get back to himself after being out injured, this will be really, really helpful. Plus, they made some really smart deadline moves that seem to be paying off. So suddenly they're back in the mix. And there's not a lot of games in hand here. Suddenly Florida now actually has a game in hand on the Islanders, and they're within 3 points. We see a game in hand for Washington, and they're within 5 points. Ottawa, 2 games in hand and within 6 points. So the 2 losses really hurt them there. Buffalo just too inconsistent. I just don't think they're going to pull this off. They're up and down like a yo-yo. We're rapidly running out of games as we approach 82. Red Wings are not in this mix, but you got to take this weekend as pretty good and say, that's good. Good job, guys. And now they face the suddenly hot Nashville Predators, who are clawing at a playoff spot, trying to get back into the wild card. I don't think this is going to happen, but they can definitely play spoiler. Nashville, again, another up and down team, suddenly on a 2-game winning streak, 7-2-1, their last 10. I believe they're still quite a bit out of the playoff spot. Let's just take a look. I think they're 5 points or something, right? Let's just look on the Western wild card. And Edmonton lost one that, man, that sucks. But, Edmonton has 80 points. So they're within striking distance of 79 for Winnipeg and 84 for Minnesota. So do not count out the Oilers. Colorado with 78 points is now in the second wild card spot. And then with 5 points back is Nashville. So the gap is there, but there's lots of hockey to play. Nashville 7-2-1, Colorado 6-3-1 their last 10. So this is going to be a race right to the end. At the moment, they're in really, really good spot, Colorado and Edmonton. And you got to think that's who's going to lock this down. That would be my assumption. But this is a big game for Nashville. They got to, if they're going to have any chance, they're going to have to beat the Wings, and the Wings are going to say, "Niet, no, my friends, that's not going to happen." We can see that suddenly Dylan Larkin with a 3-point night is back in this. At one point, we were looking at this. Aloha, Real Deal Prime. What did you think of seeing Tyler Bertuzzi for 2 games in a Boston Bruins uniform? That's terrible. I just couldn't handle it. I was having a hard time. But Dylan Larkin with a good game here with 3 points. Back 6 points his last 5 now. They were really cold. At one point going into the Boston series, the leading scorer in the prior 5 games was Moritz Seider and David Perron, I think, with 2 points each. So to get 5 goals against the Bruins, who are very good defensively, they have 2 very good goalies. They managed to get that against Jeremy Swayman, plus an empty netter. Maybe, they get kind of on an upswing here. Tommy Novak, 5 points in the last 5 games. That's really interesting. Not to be confused with God, what is it? Who does this remind me of? Anyways, Tommy Novak's an American player. 3 assists for Craig Smith, reacquired from the Boston Bruins. I think this is a good thing. Craig Smith's a talented player. I think this is good for him and for Nashville. He's played his whole career in Nashville, went as a free agent to Boston. That didn't really work out this year. But prior to this, Craig Smith can play centers, left wing, and right wing. He's really skilled. You can put him on the third or the second line or top line. Like, you can play power play. This is a good move. He seems to be happy getting back. 3 assists his last 5 games. But Tommy Novak is playing real well, so a little hot here. That's really helping out Nashville. But I just don't think they're going to have enough. They have to really go on a crazy winning streak to get in this. There's only 14 to 16 games left in the season. I just don't see them grabbing the last spot from Colorado or Edmonton unless they really go in the tank. And I think Edmonton might actually jump up. I know they've had some recent struggles, but I just think that's what's going to happen. My assumption is Kevin Lankinen as a backup's pretty good on a much better Nashville team. It's amazing how guys get out of Chicago and they do much better. That was a mess in Chicago. You can see why they're burning it to the ground and starting over. Ville Husso, although, you hate losing a guy like Kirby Dach, But they got Colton Dach, who's, very much like Kirby, maybe just a little behind on his development path, but maybe they're thinking that, and then they'll get all these draft picks. They've grabbed a bunch of guys. Kevin Korchinski is a good defenseman playing for Seattle and the WHL, but blah, blah, blah. That's another story. If you're a Montreal fan, you're very happy to have Kirby Dach. If you're Detroit, you're very happy. Pia Suter's playing well. Kubelik's playing well. You can see the Chicago guys are going elsewhere and playing well. Patrick Kane's playing well in New York. So these are pieces that just weren't working together and put them in stronger situations. And those are some pretty good players there. Too much drama last year with all the historical craziness there. So Hellberg drops to 4-7-1, but he's thrown out some pretty good games here. Just not enough to get a win, which is unfortunate because he really faced a lot of rubber in that first game. You can't really blame him for facing 38 shots, 62 shot attempts by Boston game one where he lost. So that's unfortunate, but I think he's played pretty well. Huso getting the win despite letting in 3 goals and almost letting Boston claw back in that letting. The best team probably in hockey. That's painful to say. Are they missing Taylor Hall still? Probably. So I assume that it'll be Huso versus Saros, Finn versus Finn. How will this pan out? We will find out. But that is tomorrow night on Tuesday. And then the Red Wings get 3 games off, or 3 days off. And they will face Colorado in an afternoon game on Saturday. And then next week's crazy. They got 4 games, including as Florida, St. Louis, and then Philly. Lots of back-to-back games this month, between last month and this month. So they got Boston. They had Ottawa last month, and they got home and away against St. Louis. So that's interesting. Colorado has a lot to lose there, so that's an important game for Colorado, just like the Nashville game's important. The Florida game's important for Florida. St. Louis probably out of it, so maybe not so much, but I guess it technically could let them claw back in. That's not going to happen. And then Philadelphia is out of it. Pittsburgh, very important game there. Carolina, very good, important game there. Winnipeg, very important game there. So these games are important for those teams, not necessarily the Red Wings. So Red Wings can play spoiler here. I mean, I guess if they win them all, they could get back in the contention. I just don't think that's going to happen. But they have an opportunity here to play, spoiler against some pretty good teams. We'll see how the Red Wings respond. So the next game up, again, Nashville tomorrow night. We will check in with you on Wednesday morning to see how that all turned out. Check into Hockey Nation Live tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I don't know what's going on in the NHL aside from that. That's important to note. Pittsburgh did beat the Rangers, which is good for Pittsburgh and part of their little winning streak to get back into the wild card race. They're getting goals from Rickard Reichel. Crosby's got his 50th assist and Malkin his 46th assist last night, so that was pretty good. And then Malkin and Crosby get on the power play overtime winner, that's a weird way to win it, 4-on-3. Malkin 47, Crosby 51 from Chris Letang. So the vets are doing it, and they're getting contributions from guys like Jason Zucker. What a rebound year for him, 24 goals, justifying that $5.5 million salary that he got. Good morning, RJ Calabro. Thank you for joining. The update guru agreed. So if we just take a quick look to wrap this up. So pretty good weekend by the Red Wings. They split against the Boston Bruins, handing the Bruins their 10th loss of the season. Boston 50-10. What did you think of Tyler Bertuzzi in a Boston Bruins uniform? Good night for Dylan Larkin with 3 points on the night. The win goes to Ville Husso. The prior night, Magnus Hellberg played really well. Didn't get rewarded for that. Just taking a quick look, big win for Pittsburgh last night, 3-2. They are now in the first wild card spot. So they've been clawing their way back in. They've got 2 wins in a row, and I think they are 6-2-1 or 7-2-1 their last 10. Crosby and Malkin having real good years. People are like, oh, I don't know why they re-signed Malkin. Well, this is why. The guy's got 70 points in 66 games. I mean, this guy's the most underrated player of the last 20 years. They don't win anything without this guy. He is a champion. There's a reason they wanted to make sure they got him back. Crosby's no dummy. Halak played a pretty good game there, but Tristan Jarry 931 save percentage. That's real good. They managed to keep Patrick Kane off the board. So that's a big win for Pittsburgh. Vegas, another win. Vegas is ripping it up a little bit. 5-3 with Patera as the goalie. What do you think of Vegas with, Jonathan Quick? Jonathan Quick shutting out the Carolina Hurricanes, and they won 4-0. Jakub Vrana in this game gets on the board, though, for St. Louis. So good for Jakub Vrana. I hope it turns out in life for him well, and, maybe this works out for him in St. Louis. So that's a good thing. He's got 3 goals in 9 games on the season. We know he can score 2 goals in the last 4 games with St. Louis. So, man, you just know that was a really good player that for whatever reason, whatever was going on with all the drama off the ice with him, he might have hopefully found a home in St. Louis. It's unfortunate for the Red Wings. They gave up a pretty good player, but they'll still win that trade in the end with the Washington Capitals. So that was interesting to see him get on the board. Winnipeg fighting to stay in the playoff hunt here, bumped up into beyond the wild card into a first playoff spot. They're 1 point ahead of Edmonton with a big win against the Tampa Bay Lightning. 3-2. This is a great win for the Jets, who, had some struggles early in the season, or, kind of after the All-Star or just before the All-Star. Connor Hellebuyck getting the win with a 943 save percentage in this game, beating Andre Vasilevsky. That's a pretty good result. Calgary thumping Ottawa 5-1. I think they're out of the playoffs, but they don't. And Ottawa losing 2 in a row suddenly is, they look like they're on a hot streak that was going to get them right in the playoffs. I think they'll pick it up again. It's tough to go win every single game. They had won 5 or 6 in a row. Jonathan Huberdeau, did you predict he would only have 13 goals in the year? This has not worked out great for him or for Calgary. 44 points in 64 games, but I think you're seeing clearly, as we suspected, Florida winning this trade overall. They did also get Weegar in that trade, but his numbers were definitely inflated being in Florida. Is Florida the Quebec Major Junior League of the NHL? Yeah, that's not fair to anybody. Minnesota pulling out nothing out of this. Oh, they get a point, but the 5-4 win. Barrett Hayton, 12 goals on the year, 13 goals in the year. Connor Dewar, the former captain of the Everett Silvertips in the WHL, getting his 6th. He has carved out a nice season for himself on the 3rd and 4th line for Minnesota. Clayton Keller, 28 goals in the year. Barrett Hayton, his 19th goal. So this is good news because this is from that much beleaguered Kotkaniemi, Hayton, Philip Zadina draft. It's just taking these guys a little while to catch on in the NHL. 4-point night for Barrett Hayton. And suddenly he has 5, 6, 7, 8 points his last 5 games. So this is really good news for the Arizona Coyotes. If this guy turns out to be even a second-line center, good morning, Chicago Bears fan. Thank you so much. Kane did wake up, although he didn't get on the scoreboard last night against Pittsburgh, and they lose 3-2. Detroit versus Nashville, as we said, is coming up. Thank you, RJ Calabro. But this is good news. If Barrett Hayton, suddenly a 4-point night and 8 points in his last 5 games for Arizona, he was a 5th overall draft pick. It was a little bit controversial at the time in that draft, and that draft is a little weird. Like, he got picked just after Brady Tkachuk. The one that's painful is when you pick Jesperi Kotkaniemi. However, Kotkaniemi's been playing all right. He had a 4-point night. What is going on? He had a 5-point night last week. So Barrett Hayton, 33 points in 67 games, 24 points last year in 60 games. So this is a nice little bump for him. He seems to be finding his groove in the NHL from that much strange 2018 draft. Well, Rasmus Dahlin, superstar defenseman. Svechnikov, superstar forward. Kotkaniemi actually having a pretty decent year also with that 5-point game. We know Brady Tkachuk is the captain and Mr. Everything in Ottawa, although there's a lot of other good players. Detroit picking Philip Zadina ahead of Quinn Hughes. Ooh, they're going to regret that. They already do probably. Is this the last? This is the last of the Ken Holland drafts, I believe. That's painful. That is painful. But this is turning out okay. So he's finally getting a little bit of a groove here and racking up some points, showing he's capable. He was a very good player for Team Canada for a while and in the OHL with Sioux. Kakanyemi as well, doing okay there. Jess Barry having that 5-point game, and now suddenly on the season, very similar to Barrett Hayton, 30 points in 65 games, similar pace to last season, so really within 1 point of that. Maybe he's just a 45-point guy, and that's not terrible. If he's a 15 goal and 25 to 30 assist guy, that's not terrible, and maybe he over time gets better. So I was very critical of that very, very expensive contract that seemed to be more about a grudge. Detroit had a good comeback. They did. Yeah. Well, they lost that. Did they win that game? I can't remember. I mean, Detroit is what they are. They are not a playoff team. But big win against Boston, 5-3. That is really good news. And then Nashville getting a win against Anaheim. They now face Detroit. So Nashville trying to stay in the playoff hunt. Mason McTavish in this game gets his 15th and 16th goal of the season. Philip Tomasino, I do not understand why this guy was in the AHL. He's got 8 points in 13 games for Nashville. He had no business. He had a very good rookie year with 32 points in 76 games. Like, Philip Tomasino, this is such a strange player to me. He's such a good player. He's very smart, and he's got good offensive talent. I did not understand why you put this guy in the AHL, and he was ripping it up in the AHL, and then they finally call him up. And the Craig Smith acquisition seems to be helping. So Fabry's out again. Hopefully this is short term. I don't know what's going on. You always get worried when Robbie Fabry is hurt, RJ, because he's just had such a rough history of knee injuries. He's missed so much time. Let's just hope that this is short term. But Philip Tomasino has been a big part of 3 points his last 5 games, but I think he's a real good player. He's a big part of their future there in Nashville, and he can help them now. I never understood why this guy was in the AHL, and they kept Cody Glass over him. I mean, no offense to Cody Glass. Cody Glass has just not ever worked out as an NHL player. He's not a bad kid. He's just a softer kid. 26 points in 54 games on the year. You've got to think they would have got similar or better production from Philip Tomasino. Whew. The former really high draft pick, 6th overall, Cody Glass. So I guess he's carving out a bit of a season for himself, and that's good. He's a talented player. I don't know. He's a big guy with really good hands. I don't know what you expect of him, but I like him as a talent, but I guess he's just not always consistent and intense enough for coaches. So you gotta see if he does those other things. Another shutout. So is that back-to-back shutouts? This is what's going to happen with Carolina. So Carolina gets shut out by the Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah. Well, there's players like that. I mean, a little different reason, but yeah. Stalock, that's tough for goalies. 3-0. What is going on in Carolina? They did not make aggressive enough moves. Is this the Jesse Puya-Harvey effect? They get shut out 4-0 by Jonathan Quick and the Vegas Knights, and then they get shut out by the New Jersey Devils. Have they scored a goal in their last 2 games? I don't think so. I think Carolina has been outscored 7-0 in their last 2 games, and they're on that 2-game losing streak. Like, they did not do enough to address their needs. Seems pretty obvious, and you've got no Svechnikov in this lineup. He needs some. You got all these retread names. What the heck, man? That's not going to work. You got to feel a little bit weird about what's going on. You got a lot of retreads. They retread Gostabera. They got Stefan Nolanson has had a good year, but in the end, that's not necessarily a big impact forward. Kakanyemi has done okay, but that's not a top 6 guy in my opinion. Martin Nichess, they're going to need him, but it's really easy to key in on this. I don't think Puya-Harvey is going to be more than a third liner. Not good, guys. That's bad. They got a lot of retreads on this team. At some point, that does not work. Good morning, Steve G. How do you feel about your Colorado Avalanche? They are now in the second wildcard spot in the West. Are they going to be able to pull this off? It's kind of crazy. Jonathan Quick pitching a shutout against them. No Svechnikov means no goals for this team. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. It is top of the hour. I thank you all for joining. Please hit the likes and subscribes. Good weekend overall for the Detroit Red Wings. They lose the first game against the Boston Bruins, but then they come back with a surprise 5-3 win. We will see how they do against the Nashville Predators, who have been trying to claw their way back into the wild card. I don't think they're going to do it, but this is definitely an opportunity. It is a great win. Yeah, for sure. Oh, there you go. Rick betting on the Leafs. I mean, the Leafs are a pretty darn good team, and they have a lot of star guys. No Ryan O'Reilly right now for them. No Svechnikov in Carolina means no goals. This is not good. They got a lot of retreads on this team. Paul Stastny, Derek Stepan, Puya Harvey. What's going on, Bear? Hold on. There's a lot of... Are we at tipping point for this team where they're not going to do anything? The biggest issue they have in the playoffs is they play a playoff-style game, is what I've always said. Game tonight, Colorado versus Montreal. So, Steve G, you should be excited about this one. Colorado needs a win to keep in that really tight race. Like right now, they have 5 points on Nashville, but a Colorado loss and a Nashville win on Tuesday, suddenly that's narrowed quite a bit. Yes. Well, that's expected. You expect Detroit, but they pull out wins. So, if Colorado suddenly pitches a bad game against Montreal, that's not going to be helpful. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. We will check in with you on Wednesday morning, and we will see. Yeah, there you go. There you go. But that's part of the plan. That's normal. They're rebuilding. They'll get a high draft pick, maybe a Connor Bedard, maybe an Adam Fantilli, maybe Leo Carlson. Those are all good picks. Maybe a Mishkov. Never know. And that's what you're shooting for. And that's what everybody's kind of in the race for. That's maybe more important for the long-term success of these teams than trying to fight it out and get too high in the standings and still not make the playoffs. What's the point of that? All right, guys, let's go Bears. Okay, I honestly am not keeping track of anything in football. I have no idea. Is there even a season on right now? No. You just like Chicago Bears fan 97. Yeah, I prefer Carlson over Fantilli as well, but they're both going to be good NHL players. Nice. There you go. Yeah. Only 10 losses on the season. It's gross seeing Tyler Bertuzzi in there. We know they got some injuries in Boston, but still, that's a really tough team. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Check out Hockey Nation tonight. Montreal, Colorado Avalanche, 7:30 Eastern. This shall be epic, called by Coach Frenchie. And I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday morning. We will recap what happens in the Nashville versus Detroit game. And let's keep an eye on Carolina. I think they're going to struggle. They didn't address what they really needed, which is goal scoring. We'll see. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon.